I'd like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading specialist data recruitment business. With offices in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, they're experts at providing recruitment strategy and building data teams for clients across industries Australia-wide. They provide recruitment solutions for all roles across the data lifecycle, including data engineering, data science, advanced analytics, customer and marketing insights, business intelligence, data product managers, and data governance. They're skilled at finding the best permanent and contract hires for your business needs, as well as statement of work, project-focused data resources. At Talent Insights, relationships matter most. I can say from first-hand experience, Talent Insights are fantastic to work with. Whether you're a business leader within an HR network or a specialist data candidate, Talent Insights should be the first company you turn to for all your data recruitment needs. Find them at talentinsights.com.au.
Hi, this is Felipe Flores. Welcome to Data Futurology. Today, I'm sitting down with a very, very special guest, Stela Solar. She is the Director for National Artificial Intelligence Center. Stela, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you going?
I'm going great. Great to see you again, Felipe. It's been a while since the Advancing AI conference.
That's it, yeah, and it was such a great conference, and having you kick off the event as a keynote speaker was excellent. And I had all the way to the end of day 2 and afterwards, people telling me about how much they enjoyed your presentation. So thank you so much.
Fantastic! I'm looking forward to the Sydney one. So awesome to be there with the community.
Yeah, that'll be great. So that's end of August 30th in Sydney. Looking forward to the next Advancing AI event. Thanks so much. So I was wondering if we could start by covering your role and your remit at the moment. I think it's such an impressive and fantastic opportunity that you're taking. And so please, tell us about your role and your remit at the moment.
Yeah, and it is a fantastic opportunity. I'm super excited about it. I've been in the role for about 4 months. So I lead the National AI Center that's hosted by CSIRO. And it's an opportunity to really amplify the great work that's being done in Australia already in the space of AI. Previous to this, I come from the technology space. So for 10 years, I was with Microsoft, and before that, I was with Ingram Micro, and then Express Data, which is a division of Dimension Data, and then for several startups before then. And so I've been in the tech space for a while, and I've seen how the momentum is really picking up. And I've always been drawn to the transformative technologies. So I was right there when cloud solutions were picking up, and then IoT, that was an area that I was involved in. And now AI is really the wave that is going around the world. And Australia has such phenomenal talent already in AI and such a great track record that I really wanted to be a part of the momentum to get it to the next level.
Oh, fantastic. I'm keen to ask you way more about the work that you guys are doing now. Before we jump in, I wanted to ask you, how was your time overseas? How was it? How was that time that you spent abroad?
I loved it. And I think it was, as part of my career growth, I wanted to have more adventures and try new things. And so I was drawn to the opportunities that the international technology community provided. And I moved to the US. I joined Microsoft there. I was also adventuring, I had a fantastic opportunity to explore the world and travel as part of a global role. And so for me, technology has always been very closely connected to a sense of adventure. And I think I lived that in my approach to my career, to my life, and also in my day-to-day work. I'm enjoying that cutting edge. What I definitely noticed moving from Australia to the US is that the technology firms in US have a much deeper footprint, many more people in the industry and many different types of roles. And so I was really fortunate that moving to the headquarters of Microsoft in the US, I got exposure to many different kinds of roles that I may not have seen in Australia in the tech space.
Interesting. What were some of those types of roles? That's super interesting.
Yeah, I think there were many more product planners. There were many more engineers and developers. There were many more technology researchers who were driving cutting edge research. Now, since I've come back, I've definitely realized that we have that capability as well in Australia. It is growing. And I think that growing momentum is what I want to help accelerate even further.
I love it. That's great. Yeah, with the career and the experience and trajectory that you've had, plus being able to see how things are done in other countries, that's a great combination to to come back and help us move this capability forward.
Yeah, and I've been really fortunate because in my previous roles, I have seen the global perspective of how AI is being developed and implemented around the world by different organizations across industries. And so now I'm really looking forward to leveraging those experiences back in Australia to really help both the adoption of AI and the creation of new AI in our Australian economy.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I noticed that a few of your of the last few roles that you had at Microsoft, they were mostly global roles, and then the last one there, you spent a fair bit of time in the AI space as a global director. So that's amazing. No, that's great.
And it's always it's actually an interesting perspective having a global view. And quite often, coming from Australia, I would think about where is Australia sitting right now in my holistic global business? And Australia has a great reputation for leading cloud adoption, in cloud adoption in general. But when it comes to AI, we're not actually leading. We're a little bit behind the general momentum in the world. And so this is a really unique area to explore. Why are we leading in general cloud adoption, but lagging in AI adoption, especially when we have such strong AI research that's very highly ranked in the world? Australia's AI research is ranked 5th in the world, and that is a phenomenal place to be considering a country of our size. So it's an intriguing puzzle for me to figure out how I can best support the industry in Australia to help each business harness the benefits of AI in a responsible and inclusive way. And what I'm discovering as well is there is a tremendous opportunity to actually help every Australian make the most of this transformation in the world, this digital transformation, this AI transformation. It really is a wave that we want to help more Australians ride through to the next stage.
That's phenomenal. Yes, that's inspirational, and that's exactly the type of conversation that we should be having in Australia. That is great. And currently, do you have any forming hypotheses on what could be some of the reasons where we that are maybe helping us or keeping us a little bit behind on the AI adoption and making use of it, getting the value from it? There's a big community. There's a lot of interest. There's really good research. Do you have any early hypotheses on areas that we could do better in?
It's a very rich topic area, so by no means have I figured it out, or do I have all the answers. There are probably 3 things that are on my mind right now that I'm noticing. One is skills. So we do have capability in Australia. We just need more of it. And in fact, the whole world needs more of the capability in digital and in AI. So I think skills is one area to take a look at. Another area is that throughout time, since technology has been building in momentum, most of the investment in technology engineers and developers by some of the large technology companies has been typically in the US or some of the other major development centers. And we haven't had as much exposure in Australia to really help nurture that talent pool and momentum. And then a third thing that's really on my mind is, and I experienced this myself living in Seattle, there is the factor of tech cities. Tech cities have a critical mass of people who have a common language to help share ideas and accelerate those ideas further. So if I would go to a supermarket, or if I would go out for dinner or for a coffee, even working from a coffee shop on my laptop, by and large, the person next to me is probably going to have been from the tech industry. That's just what Seattle felt like. Everyone around was working in tech. I imagine similar experiences in Silicon Valley and other tech centers. And so what ends up happening is that when you have technology conversations or AI conversations with the person next to you, they understand what you mean. Yeah. And then they take that conversation further. My experience so far coming back to Australia has been when I have AI conversations with the person next to me in the real world, they typically aren't that deep in AI or technology. And quite often the conversation is at the base level of what does AI even mean? And I think this is an element for us to be aware of, that tech cities can actually help innovation. Our cities, though, do not have that critical mass yet of technical expertise. However, the strength that I've found is in the diversity of our cities. Our cities have many different industries, many different roles, many different people coming together. And I think this is a strength we want to embrace so that when we build technology, it is diverse and it is inclusive from day one. And I think that's the strength in Australia's current landscape of technology, is that we have every opportunity to be responsible, inclusive, and diverse in how we approach technology from day one.
Oh, that's great. To identify the strengths, double down on them, identify what we can do better and expand, and then help drive that conversation and that focus.
Yeah, and if other people who might see this video, if you have other ideas or thoughts on what might be happening in terms of Australia's strengths or opportunities in AI, we would love to hear from you. And if there's an opportunity to comment, please share your comments with us.
Fantastic, and we'll put the email of the National AI Center in the show notes for that. That is great, and you've covered so much ground in the 4 or 5 months that you've been in this role. What are some surprises, or maybe some things that you didn't expect coming into the role that you've discovered in your time so far?
I didn't realize how many amazing things Australia had invented. Mm-hmm. I think that has been the biggest it's not even a surprise, because I've always known Australians are amazing. We have fantastic skills, a great education system, and Australians have a strong reputation internationally in terms of contributing to the global technology industry. But coming back and going deeper into some of the discoveries, I am amazed every day. Our strength in robotics. And, we just won the Data 61 robotics team, won second in the world for the DARPA Robotics Challenge. And it's a subterranean challenge,
wow.
Underground search and navigation with robots. That's phenomenal. I also think about discovering that Australia invented the bionic eye. I did not even know that Australia invented the bionic eye. And so there you go. We're also, what I just heard is a second in the world for computer vision, machine learning, computer vision. That is tremendous. If we just focused in on that, we're second. If we focused in, could we be first? That is a real question that I quite often have, is if we championed our capability, if we really were aware of it and all supported it as a country, as each individual person being aware of the strengths, would that ticket right over that edge for us to really be the leader in AI in the world, and in particular, embrace the responsible and inclusive AI opportunity. In fact, it was also amazing for me to learn that Australia was amongst the first in the world to actually publish the Australian AI ethics framework. Yeah. So it was in 2019, and that's literally when the first ethics frameworks were coming out. I think there was maybe another 1 or 2 countries that did it at the same time. So we have this strength and this first mover advantage and this innovation core to ourselves that I'm just excited to see where we could take it next. And that's what I want to help accelerate to the next level, so that we do reach that next level that we very well can.
Oh, that's amazing. That's phenomenal. So definitely, we it sounds like we're doing well from a research perspective, from advancing the field and creating those innovations. What about then taking those innovations into different applications, into different industries, areas like that. What have you seen in that space so far?
Yeah, and this is where I think our biggest opportunity is. I will share with you a statistic that I don't quite know how to understand myself, and it's I'll compare two numbers. When we look at some of the global figures around AI adoption, the number, depending on the report you look at, the number is anywhere between 50 to 80% of the world's organizations are somewhat applying and adopting AI technology. In fact, the KPMG report, the State of AI, says that it's about 56% of organizations are adopting AI. Now, the Australian Bureau of Statistics surveyed 7,000 Australian organizations and found the number is 2% of organizations who said they were using AI. Now, that number is incredibly challenging to understand because, you probably, as well as myself, we know quite a number of organizations who are trying to use AI, and it feels higher than 2%. But I think what it indicates is that the people who were responding probably were not aware of what their organization was doing in terms of AI. And to me, this is actually a bigger signal of how strategic AI is to Australian businesses. And so is it a pilot project for a team or some developer having a passion and trying new AI work, or a data scientist building a new model for maybe customer recommendation? It might be in these pockets across the organization, but not quite connected into the core of the strategy. And I think that's where there is a big opportunity for Australian businesses, is to think about how AI can help the core value and differentiation of their organization. And I think of it in four different ways, that every business has an AI opportunity in terms of how they engage with their customers to create these amazing customer experiences. They also have an opportunity to provide tools and empower their employees. So how do you make your employees and your people do their best work? There's also an AI opportunity in terms of operations. How do you do, maybe there's some automation opportunity there, or quality anomaly detection opportunity there. And then in terms of creating new products and services, that's a fourth area. How can AI help you create new products and services? So every business has this opportunity to think about AI as core to their strategy. And that's, I think, where Australian business has a particularly large opportunity ahead of us.
Oh, that is fantastic. And yeah, I really like looking at it from that lens of a business having the four areas where AI can be applied. The statistics you shared, that is, like a bit mind blowing, a bit, do you know?
If you don't mind, if I can just mention one more thing about that statistic.
Yeah.
So 2% in general is out of 7,000 businesses surveyed. Now, Australia has a very large number of small and medium businesses.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
And in fact, even if you look at our medium-sized businesses compared to some of the larger markets in the world, even the medium size may be seen on the smallish size and compared to some of the global companies.
Yeah.
And so there is an opportunity for us to help small and medium business be successful with AI, because there is a lower likelihood that a small business would have their own dedicated investment in developers or their own dedicated investment in data scientists. And when I look at the guidance and the messaging in the market today about AI, it is very high level. It is around AI opportunity and adoption and data science opportunity. It doesn't actually translate it into what it means for small business. And how would they even explore this opportunity for them when they do not have an investment in data science or developers? And so because Australia has such a large number of small and medium business, I think our AI opportunity also looks a little bit different. And that's also probably reflected in that 2%, because by and large, small, medium business needs a different path to AI than potentially what a large business would have, where the majority, where they would actually have developer or data science investment. In fact, a really surprising figure is Goldman Sachs, that 25% of their employees worldwide are in the area of computer science and computer engineering. That's 25% of their organization, and they're not a technology for a bank, right? And so you think about a small business, they would never have a quarter of their employees in those kind of roles. So it's really different conversations. And I think as a tech industry, we have work to do there to really support small business and medium business across Australia to embrace AI.
Wow, definitely. And that's a completely different paradigm to what we've been working towards so far, where at the moment we seem to have in larger companies, we have a small or medium-sized team of data scientists which get their work largely prioritized at an enterprise level if the reach of the data scientist is at an enterprise level, because as you were mentioning before, sometimes it's at a POC stage or just an introduction stage. But for the ones that are more mature, they have this kind of like this one team that's working through prioritized tickets essentially, and those areas of focus, looking to get value from them. And this is flipping the table completely in terms of how do you see this looking? People working on services that can be more easily available, easily integrated. There might be some tech uplift there. Any initial thoughts on there's definitely a complete paradigm shift, but any initial thoughts on what the new world could look like if we do focus on serving a large number of small to medium businesses?
Yeah, and in fact, there's an indication that about 60% of Australians' businesses are looking for how to start with AI. So it's really the first steps. And I think we have an opportunity to focus on that. And at the National AI Centre, we are going to focus on helping business, especially small and medium business, figure out those early low-hanging fruit use cases that are going to generate the return on investment for the business. So which ones are the first ones that make sense? So we'll be focused on defining some of those in order to help those organizations who want to take the first steps. I think there's also a second opportunity, which is for us to create that path and paint the picture of what does AI adoption look like for small business. And a lot of it would look like probably procurement conversations or technology conversations with their technology vendors or licensing suppliers. There is probably conversations for small business to have with the ecosystem they're already working with about how technology could be adopted. So if I think about if a small or medium business is currently using RPA, a robotics process automation solution, the AI services in there, they're quite often optional. They are not, they're in there by default from the start. And so did the small or medium business know that they could actually ask their RPA provider for what are the AI services they could use? And that straight away would start bringing some AI technologies. Then if I think about maybe CRM solutions, some of them, obviously customer relationship management, CRM is super important. There are extensibility options there to bring in more AI services and modules into that environment to create better experiences for customers. And so again, has the small and medium business had that conversation yet with their technology provider of the CRM solution around how AI could light up new value for them within the CRM? So I think it's paving the path towards those conversations with technology suppliers during the procurement discussion, during licensing. And if those suppliers of technologies don't have a good answer on how AI can be connected, then that becomes a buying decision point for the small and medium business. Is that the supplier they want to use, or do they want to go towards someone else who is investing in the latest technology that can help their business?
Great. I love that. Um, it's a small change to the work processes, but it can create such huge gains in terms of the adoption of AI and the value that businesses can get from it just by increasing that awareness and asking the question.
Yeah, and that's on the adoption side. The other group that I want to really address in the small and medium business area is the innovators, the creators, the new technology development businesses, which are really on the cutting edge. So they're not really thinking about adopting AI for their internal work or for their customers, but they're designing new products. And obviously, the sky's the limit for AI adoption there. And you obviously want to have that in-house development technology capability for those purposes. But yeah, what I was speaking about before is particularly organizations who want to adopt AI for their own business operations, maybe for operations or for their employees or for their customers. But they may not necessarily be producing new technology. It's more to run their existing business.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where we see, or we're going to see the majority of the value being created by the adoption of having AI being used in as many businesses as possible in every industry, ideally, and in almost like in every nook and cranny of the organization, have a bit of AI and machine learning there helping, making things easier, better decisions, automation, etc.
Yeah, very much so. And I think what we're seeing is over time, many roles will become adjacent roles for AI, meaning that AI will become a part of our day-to-day. And we will not even notice that we're using AI. It will just become part of the tools that we use. And already I experienced this. Everyone, I think, that is watching this has experienced it. You might already be getting, predictive text recommendations. That's a basic one. But even at work, slide design in PowerPoint, when I'm designing a slide designer comes up on the right. And I'm a terrible designer of slides. So I'm thankful every day that this designer suggests how I should lay things out. But that's a way that AI is coming into my work where I'm not even noticing it's AI. It's connected into the tools that I work with every day.
That's excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. I also wanted to ask your thoughts on the area of responsible AI and ethical AI. You mentioned that we had the kind of like a first mover advantage in terms of Australia being one of the first in the world to release our guidelines and principles, which is fantastic. And where do you think we can go from here? Where's the next big opportunity for Australia to focus on when it comes to responsible AI?
Yeah, so in 2019, the AI ethical framework, Australia's AI ethics framework, was released with 8 principles. And what's intriguing to see is the momentum picking up from there. So we had the ACOLA report that was released that really highlighted the importance of, again, ethical AI. Then the Australian Human Rights Commission also released a report of how important it is for Australians to have AI that they can trust. And so the topic and this area of responsible AI has definitely been accelerating in Australia. And the frontier that we're at today is making it real through tools and practice. And so I think that's also where we as National AI Centre are helping to bridge that path from the principles over into the tools, the practice. What does it actually look like? And there are already a tremendous number of tools out there that are starting to be released that really help understand and interpret AI models, that help ensure that there isn't bias in data, that are ensuring privacy and security. So there are great toolkits already being developed. There are a lot more to be created in order for us to really reach that full spectrum of responsibility across the 8 principles. And I think that's where we're at. It's how do we make the tools to make the principles something that can actually be embedded and invoked in our AI systems.
Yeah, very, very nice. Yes, I agree that's where it feels like that's where the industry is at the moment in terms of applying the principles and finding ways to make that embedded into our workflows and the way that we create AI, the way that we talk about it, having those decisions there really embedded in.
And many of the leading technology vendors around the world who have AI services have started creating some of those tool sets. There are also many research organizations in Australia who are also making those tool sets. And even at Data 61, we have amongst the largest investment in responsible AI researchers. There are 50 responsible AI researchers at Data 61. And they are focused on this. It's about applying responsible AI, making it real. So the momentum's picking up, and I'm excited what's to come over the next couple of years.
That's excellent. That is really great. Yeah, we definitely need improvement in the AI techniques in terms of explainability. We need to be able to have the policies and the frameworks and be able to make sure that that's being followed, make that auditable. There's kind of like a whole infrastructure there that's required. Super exciting. One of the areas that I personally have found a bit tricky in responsible and ethical AI is the sometimes not having the right data for what you're trying to improve. So, for example, at the moment, in my day job, I work in healthcare. What we're trying to do is improve people's health. We don't have data on people's health. What we do have is a poor proxy, which is their healthcare spend that a health insurer would pay for. And it doesn't mean that, somebody that spends more is necessarily less healthy than somebody, and if somebody spends less, doesn't necessarily mean that they're more healthy. And at the moment, we use kind of like this poor proxy to try and see what type of support people need in their healthcare. And this kind of like, it's a bit of a blurred line into kind of responsible AI that on one hand, there's the privacy side and accessing people's data or making it available with consent and for a particular purpose. They're all important principles that we want, but then highlighting the benefit that we could give somebody with access to the data is kind of a chicken and egg sometimes that, sometimes not. My point is that sometimes we don't have it feels like sometimes we don't have the data to be able to do the right level of AI recommendations to have an impact in somebody's life, and that because of that we get caught in ethical trouble sometimes. Where, for example, in the US, they've discovered a lot of biases in healthcare support when healthcare spend is used as a proxy, because it's a reflection of socio-demographic indicators instead of somebody's health. So there's kind of a bit of blur lines there, but definitely
and there's kind of two things to it, right? Which is you spoke about the bias in data that we have, and then the data that we don't have. There are data deserts out there because we've just never collected that data. And because there are data deserts, it means that there is a risk that our models and assumptions may not be accurate, or we may not even be able to make assumptions because there's not insufficient data. So it's it is a fascinating area. It's bias and then data deserts as well. What I love is the example when it comes to bias. I love the example of EY, Ernst & Young. And they have a solution that is a loan approval solution that they provide to banks. And their solution, like, all solutions in the world, are using some kind of a algorithm that is based on data. And through history, I think we can all agree, our history has not been equitable for all. We have had very challenging pasts, and for example, women haven't had the vote, or various populations have been discriminated. So our past is very biased, if you look at the data back from there. Now, that bias in historical data continues to be with us today. And so what Ernst & Young found was that their loan approval methods, because they were based on historical data, they were actually biased. And they found, using the Fair Learn machine learning toolkit, they found that there was a 7% bias where women were getting 7% disadvantaged in their loan approvals than men. Now, they used that same toolkit to actually reverse the bias and take it out. And so from 7%, they've gone to, I think it's a 0.3%. It's less than, it's less than one. And they continue to refine that. So it's fascinating that the AI picked the bias that we could not see, because we as a society, we are navigating so many biases as humans, as society, through cultures. And so AI has this tremendous opportunity to actually help us uncover our own bias and counterbalance it, like in this EY example. And I'm so happy that EY had invested to do that. There are biases all around us. EY just took some action on it, which was fantastic. And then I think about the data deserts that you mentioned. As I was talking with a researcher who was building vision models, he was really passionate about who object recognition models could serve. And he really thought about potentially people with vision impairment could benefit from some AI technologies. But then if you take the step further, quite often models are trained on perfect images. You know, if you wanted to build a model that could recognize fruit, you would probably feed it a whole lot of fruit images, and the fruit would be, you know, in the center or in the photo, it would be in focus, and you would train the model. But this researcher was really telling me that if a person with vision impairment would take a photo of a fruit bowl to see what was in the fruit, it may be a blurry photo. They may not even center it. The fruit may be cut. And so even how we're training these models, the data desert in terms of representing the diversity is incredibly challenging in itself. And what I'm really happy to also hear is there are many community organizations around the world, research organizations, civic organizations, who are aware of this and are actively filling the gap. And I think that's my probably call to action for everyone who might view this video, is if you see a gap, you are empowered to fill it. So you could reach out to organizations and partner with them to collaborate on generating data sets. These kind of partnerships are already happening, particularly in the healthcare space, particularly in diverse community representations. There are opportunities out there to fill the data desert. It is a big desert, but we're going to fill it, water it one step at a time.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. I think that is a excellent note to end on, between, you know, an AI tool to recognize bias and then decrease bias, and then a call to action to start watering the data deserts. And additionally, as we spoke about before, you also highlighted how to start with AI. Look at the 4 areas in your organizations. Think about how AI can be applied in those areas, and have conversations with your technology suppliers around where they use AI and how can they use AI. And if they don't, look at alternatives. I think we've covered so much ground. Stella, thank you so much. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, we've covered a lot. And, you know, as a closing point, my role at the National AI Centre is to make every business in Australia successful with AI. It's also to make every Australian have an opportunity to be part of the AI momentum. And so if you have insights for us on what we could do better to support you, we would love to hear from that.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and for all the great work you do.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.